My hair is so fucking long. Alright, welcome back to this new inspirational video. Today I wanted to talk about how you could write your very first book, because it's a dream many people have. Sadly, not everybody achieves that dream, and we want to achieve dreams on this channel. At least the ideas we talk about are meant to help you achieve your dreams. So I want to show you two books that I wrote, The Miracle of Wanting and Thinking from Imagination. And throughout this video, you'll be able to learn about some ideas on how you can start working on your first book and actually finish the book. You see, there's many people out there that start writing something, but then they don't finish what they set out to write. So if you have a dream, So if you that's great. So if you have a dream, pay careful attention to the rest of this video and you'll be well on your way to achieving and realizing the very dream you hold in your heart of becoming a writer. Best-selling author, maybe you'll become one, but at least you'll have a book finished if you follow the steps that we'll go over throughout the rest of this video. Writing is a form of art, whether it's fiction or non-fiction. In both cases we are painting a picture with words. Books can provide education, entertainment, or a combination of the two. In other words, if you want to be a writer, that's pretty cool, but if you're currently not sure whether you can truly pull it off, this video will offer you some guidance on how to start. First, I want to dispel 4 common myths. The first one goes something like this: it must be very difficult to write a book. Have you ever had this thought running through your mind, even though you would like to write a book? This idea alone might be enough to stop most people from actually giving it a shot. I want you to carefully think about something. Every person on the planet has enough life experiences to write their own book. Whether it's fictional or not doesn't matter. One form of writing is based on actual life experiences and lessons you've learned throughout your own journey so far, and the other one is mostly dependent on your own creativity. Though fiction is perhaps even better if it is combined with elements of the real world. Something you can relate to that could get the reader emotionally involved as well. It is not difficult to write a book. We might argue it is difficult to write a bestseller, but that too is a myth. Being a bestseller has nothing to do with being a great writer, but you have to start writing in order to become a bestseller, if that's your dream. So how do you start? By getting rid of the thought that it will be difficult. If you had to write an essay in school, or if you were to try to write about something right now, odds are you'd be able to do it easily if you put in the effort. A book, after all, is nothing but a bunch of pages filled with words that are meant to paint a scene or share an idea. So, what's stopping people? Perhaps they forget that the more clear they are about the book they want to write, the easier it becomes. If you don't have a clear idea about the subject you want to convey through your book or the genre of your story, how could you possibly write a book? If you are struggling with this one, the first thing you have to do is get a clear idea of what the book will be about and write that down for yourself so you can go over it and expand upon it over time. The second myth goes like this: it must be very difficult to find a publisher for my book. Well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that you don't need a publisher for your book in this day and age of the internet. Think about it. If you wrote a book and finish it, you have a digital version of your book and you can start sharing that with the world. True, you might need to set up a website or a YouTube channel or something on social media in order to get attention for your book, but the old idea of finding a publisher is getting more outdated as the years tick on. So what's the bad news? Well, the bad news is that without a publisher, you might have to do a lot of work on your own. A publisher could set aside a budget helping you market your book in order for it to reach potential readers, but other than that, it's about the contents of your book, whether it will sell or not. Do not let this discourage or intimidate you. It can be a fun journey. If you know people who are involved in publishing books, you can always ask them for help, but most writers don't know anyone like that, so what's left? We have to start for ourselves, because in the end, digital books can never run out of print. You have an infinite amount of copies available to spread across the globe if that's what you want. Perhaps you have to improve your knowledge on how to market yourself, but that can be Googled easily in this day and age. There are enough people out there who can give you powerful advice on how to get started building a name for yourself. So if you have a dream of becoming a writer, but the thought of not knowing any publisher that might sell your work scares you off, Let go of the fear and embrace the dream. That's all you have to do. The third myth goes like this. Well, I have to be very lucky in order to earn money with what I wrote. This is absolutely false. What you need is people who would be interested in your work. What you need is the right target audience for your book, whether it's fiction or non-fiction. There's an audience out there of people who will be interested in reading your book, since they are already reading similar books from other authors. Where does this leave us when starting out? With the clear awareness that if we finished our book, we can then start building things around that book that will serve as marketing tools. One powerful way is to start a YouTube channel and start talking about your own book. Start sharing your passion for writing. Share a few free narrated samples of your book through video format and you can start attracting the right kind of reader for your work. Will enough people show up overnight in order for you to make a full-time living off your book? Well, maybe. In most cases it won't happen that fast. The goal is to make people aware of your work and readers will come. In my own case, I've posted my entire books as audiobooks with additional information for free on my YouTube channel, since my passion is to simply keep creating content. However, even though I put the books up for free, sometimes people still buy a copy, which is pretty cool to say the least. Now the fourth myth. What about a writer's block? Well, what about it? If you're stuck, if you can't come up with some new creative ideas in order to advance your own story, simply take a break from it. You see, sometimes people are afraid that they might lose inspiration while working on a book and they end up stuck forever because of this fear. Again, they don't start to begin with. You will discover that the more clear you make the vision for your book, the easier it is to keep going and finish your very first book. More often than not, after a short break, you will receive new inspiration for your own story. It will flow right into your consciousness from the atmosphere surrounding your own mind. Yes, I made it sound rather metaphysical, but that's how I look at it in my own life, whenever I want to write something. Those were some common myths and obstacles for anyone wanting to write their first book. Now let's go over a few very specific steps you can take starting today in order to make it happen. In the not so distant future, you can hand over a physical copy or send over a digital copy of your first book to your friends and family. Now that's pretty cool, I can tell you that much. Now the first step is, know what your book will be about. If it's non-fiction, what will be the subject of your book? Do you have some specialized knowledge based on personal experience that you would love to share with the world? Write down what the subject is about. If it's a fictional book, what genre would it be? Do you want to write a romance story, a drama story, a scary story? Write it down. Whenever I wrote my own books, I had a very clear idea what it would be about. In my case, it was meant to inspire and help people learn more about the power of their own minds. In your case, it might be totally different, but it will be very beneficial to make it clear from the start. So whenever you do end up with a writer's block, all you have to do is go over the main vision you had for your own book, so you can ignite your own imagination all over again to keep the inspiration flowing. In the case of fiction, most writers have their own ritual of some sort in order to get started. You just have to play around for yourself and find what works for you. In some cases it can be helpful to go to the very end of your own fictional story and look back at what your characters went through in order to reach that point, so that you can write about it. In other cases, authors like to simply start writing a few lines here and there, and the story starts flowing from there. You'll have to experiment for yourself what feels the most natural and enjoyable to you, so pay attention to that. Now step 2. How many chapters do you think your book will contain? Now this might seem bizarre if you haven't even started yet, but the goal is to get you to start. After all, it's the start where most people stop. By picking a number, you have something to work towards. In the case of one of my own books, I simply said to myself, I'll write 10 chapters. I won't quit until it is done. I started writing, and after I finished the 10th chapter, I realized, wait a minute, I want to share more through this book, so I added 2 more chapters. It can be the same for you. If it's a fictional book, it might seem odd, but remember, it's not about the amount of chapters necessarily. It is about us getting started and aiming to finish at least those chapters. And as you keep writing with that goal in mind, it will become a lot easier to edit, adjust, or add more to your own book in the long run. Now step 3. Once you have a clear idea what your book will be about and how many chapters you want it to contain, start writing. Seriously, if you were to write 1 page a day over 1 entire year, you'd have a rather huge book already. So what's holding you back? Now, does that mean everything you wrote will be up to your liking? Probably not, but that is also part of the fun. If you start writing and actually finish your book, you can adjust whatever you want later on. You shouldn't be worried over whether your first chapter is already 100% perfect. Whenever we do something for the first time, odds are that we aren't really good at it yet, but we will learn to become better at it over time. This rule applies to writing as well as anything else. I'm sure you're familiar with this concept in other areas of your life. Also, be very careful not to fall into the trap of adjusting your own book indefinitely. I've known people who started writing a book and years later they still didn't finish the book because they keep trying to perfect it. In any creative work, we also have to be willing to finish what we started and simply share it with the world. If that part is missing, for all we know, you could be a great writer, but nobody will ever know about your work. Simply put, just be passionate about what you're writing and don't be afraid to finish what you started. You can have a million more ideas on how to potentially improve your book, but literally no book on the planet is 100% perfect, so you don't have to worry about it nearly as much as you might think. People will admire your effort regardless. Of course, not everyone likes the same genres or subjects you might write about, but generally speaking, people tend to be very supportive, whether it's your first book or your 10th book. If you dare to do this one thing, I can guarantee that you will hold a book in your hands that you wrote in the not so distant future. A book you can keep sharing with people for the rest of your life, for all I care. Now, this is essentially how I wrote my own books. I get a clear idea on what it's about. I know how many chapters I would like it to contain. Then I start writing. And once I wrote the amount I had planned for my own book, I go over it maybe a dozen times to adjust whatever I felt like wasn't entirely the way I wanted it to be. You see, by doing this at the end of the day, I finish my own books and so can you. It is time to start believing in yourself. It is time to trust in the writer that is locked up within you, or else you wouldn't have the desire to write to begin with. As I like to tell people through other videos on my channel, you wouldn't even have the desire to do something or achieve something if it wasn't possible for you to realize it. Think clearly about the 3 steps I shared with you through this video. There's probably a lot more I could share and talk about, but these are the basics. If you ever have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section below and maybe I can address them in a future video. Alright, if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing to receive new inspirational videos on a regular basis. And with that being said, dear viewer, never forget that we are the dreamers.